All right, page 218. Page 218. Had an around the world competition. Elaine almost made it around the world. Michael did make it around the world, somehow without beating Bryson. I don't know. Feels like an empty win when you don't beat Bryson there, right? You anyway, it was very entertaining to watch. Page 218, you did numbers 19 through 27 for homework. Also had some homework on page 220. We're going to look at page 220 in just a moment. Let's start on page 218. Number 19, 48 inches equals how many feet? What did you get, Corey?
4.
4 feet is correct. Number 20, 27 feet. How many yards, Bryson?
9.
9 yards is correct. Number 21, 4 fluid ounces. How many tablespoons, Sam?
2.
How many tablespoons does it take to make a fluid ounce? Flip back.
2.
1 fluid ounce equals 2 tablespoons. And here's the key. If it takes 2 to make a single fluid ounce, which is the bigger one? The fluid ounce is bigger. So we're going from larger to smaller tablespoons, if I get it right. We're going from larger to smaller, and we go from larger to smaller, we multiply. So we're going to multiply by 2 to get 8 tablespoons. For redemption, Sam, number 22, this was a little bit of a more challenging one. 83 quarts, how many gallons?
20.6
Not 20.6 repeating. Kirsten?
20.
It's also not exactly 20, Ben.
16, 30, 3/4.
Are you looking at your answer in the book? Because you're staring at me instead of reading it out of there.
16, 3/4.
Okay, we're all around it. Michael? 20 and 3/4, okay? We're going from quarts to gallons. We know we had to divide by 4, and I think all of us did, right? So when we divide the 83 by 4, 4 goes into 8 class, 2 times with nothing left, right? We bring down the 3, and 4 go into 3 class. No, so we put the 0. Here's where I would recommend, instead of going with the decimal, just put the 3 over 4 and say 20 and 3/4, because somehow you got 20.6 repeating. Well, that would be 20 and 2/3. Well, obviously, I don't have a 2/3, I have a 3/4, so just leave the 3/4. Not quite sure how we got a 16 and 3/4. Somebody else said 20 even. Well, there's a remainder here, right? So make sure we take care of it. 20 and 3/4 gallons. They say third try's the charm. Number 23, Sam. 16 teaspoons, how many tablespoons?
15.7. 15.7.
15.7. Okay, for one thing, stop it with the decimals. Leave fractions. How many teaspoons in a tablespoon? What does your work show? What did you do in your work? Look at your work for page 218, number 23. What did you actually do to get your answer?
I did 20. Right here. 4 divided by 24.
4 divided by 23.
Oh, that's wrong.
On number 23? How many teaspoons in a tablespoon, Sam? 3. And we're going from larger to smaller, or smaller to larger?
Smaller to larger.
Little teaspoon to bigger tablespoon serving the mashed potatoes. Smaller to larger, we divide by 3. How many times does 3 go to 16? 5 with how many left over?
1.
And don't try to make it decimal, just leave it as 5 1/3. Number 24, Kirsten needed some redemption. 72 pecks, how many bushels?
18.
18, we divide by 4. Number 25, 56 fluid ounces, how many quarts? Ben needed some redemption. Oh, and this one's challenging because on number 25, class, we don't have fluid ounces to quarts memorized, do we?
No.
But we can go from fluid ounces to, say, cups, right? How many fluid ounces in a cup, Ben?
8.
8 fluid ounces. And so if we were to divide the 56 by 8, that's no problem at all. What's 56 divided by 8? 7. So we know there's 7 cups, but we want quarts. Well, class, how many cups are in a pint? 2. If I divide by 2, that'll give me how many pints, but If I cut 7 in half, what do I get, Ben?
3 1/2.
3 1/2. But that's still pints. I need to go to quarts. Class, how many pints in a quart?
2.
2, I gotta divide by, wait a second, what have I just created, class? Complex fraction is a division problem. Do I really want to divide though?
No.
We want to multiply by the
Reciprocal.
So I'm going to make this 7 halves. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal 1/2 to get back to Ben
7 over 4.
7 fourths, which let's make that a mixed number now.
1 and 3/4.
How many had, this was a really tough one. How many had 1 and 3/4? Bryson, you did. Great job, Bryson. Questions from the rest of us. This thing is nasty. Questions on this? All right, let's take a look at number 26. 128 quarts. How many bushels? Well, we haven't memorized how many quarts are in a bushel, have we? But we do know there's how many quarts in a peck, class? 8. So we could divide the 128 by 8 to get how many pecks? Well, Michael, 8 goes into 12. With 4 left over, 8 goes into 48. 6. Okay, so that gives us 16 pecks. But again, we don't want pecks, we want bushels. How many pecks in a bushel?
4.
Divide by the 4, we end up with 4 bushels. How many had 4 bushels for your answer on number 26? Number 27, 64 quarts equals how many bushels? There's a really easy way to do this. Class, we just said 128 quarts was 4 bushels, right? How does 64 quarts compare to 128 quarts in the previous problem, class? It's half as big, right? The 128 is double. This is half as big. So we're going to have half as many bushels. So not 4 bushels, Elaine, but 2 bushels. How many saw that and cheated a little bit? Instead of taking the long way around, and quarts is 8 pecks and 8 pecks is 2 bushels, you're just like, hey, it's half as many, I'm going to go 2. All right, mathematicians are lazy. All right, questions on 19 to 27. I showed many of them, any that you still need to see worked. Corey?
So on number 26, I still got 4, but I divided the 4 by 128 and then got 32.
1/32.
Yeah, and then I got 32 pecks and then I divided that out by 8, but that's still. And then
You ended up dividing by 4 and by 8. You did it the wrong way. It worked out for you. I wouldn't plan to do it that way, but it works, right? Because the important thing is you divide it by 4 pecks to the bushel and you divide it by 8 quarts to the peck. Yes, it's a little unconventional, but I'm not going to say it's completely wrong. All right, good. Other questions on these? All right, now let's take a look at the other part of the homework, page 220 now. So flip over another page, page 220, and you did 15 to 25. 15 to 25. Number 15, 6 quarts, how many gallons? Griffin?
24.
Oh, Griffin, which is bigger, a gallon or a quart? Quart-sized bottle, gallon jug. Which one's bigger?
Gallon.
Gallon. So we're going from smaller to larger. Divide. Should have divided by 4. And when we divide by 4, we don't get 24, we get 6 fourths.
6 fourths.
Well, yeah, but what does that become? 6 fourths becomes, class?
1.5.
1.5. 1.5. 1 and 2 fourths, but 1.5. All right, for redemption, back to Griffin. 5 teaspoons. How many tablespoons?
1 and 2. 1 and 2/3.
1 and 2/3 is correct. 4 fluid ounces. How many tablespoons, Corey? 8. 45 cups. How many fluid ounces in there, Bryson?
360.
360 when we multiply by 8. 8 pecks. How many bushels do we have? Kirsten.
Oh, which question are we on again?
Pay attention. Number 19, 8 pecks. How many bushels?
2.
2. Number 20, 16.25 gallons. How many quarts, Michael?
65.
65 quarts when we multiply by 4. Good job with a mixed number there. Number 21, 384 fluid ounces. How many quarts? Well, you can divide by 16 to get your pints, then divide that by 2 to get your quarts. Volunteer for number 21. Elaine?
12.
12 quarts. Very good. 10 tons. How many ounces? Well, first, class, we got to convert tons to Pounds multiplied by 2,000. But then pounds has to be converted to ounces by multiplying by 16. What did you get for your answer on 22, Sam?
125.
10 tons. How many ounces in a ton? So, did you, first of all, realize you had to convert to pounds in order to convert to ounces, Sam? Did you have that in-between step?
I believe so.
Okay, make sure your work is nice and clear for you to follow along in your work. How do we go from tons to pounds? How many pounds in a ton?
2,000.
And we're going from smaller to larger or larger to smaller?
Larger or smaller.
Huge to much smaller, right? So we're going to
Times.
multiply times 2,000. Now, basically, I'm going to hang all 4 zeros. What's 1 times 2? 2. Then, from pounds to ounces, is that larger to smaller, smaller to larger?
Larger to smaller.
Still larger to smaller, right? A pound isn't real big, but it's definitely bigger than just an ounce. So it's still larger to smaller, so I'm still going to multiply by how many ounces in a pound?
16.
16. Now again, I'm going to hang the 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to say 2 times 6.
32.
Okay, 2 times 16 is 32. Okay. And so put our comma in there. We should have 320,000 ounces. It's a lot of ounces, isn't it? How many have 320,000 ounces for number 22? Question?
No, but I was way off.
Yeah. Does that make sense, though, what you should have did? All right, should have done. All right, number 23, 25 bushels. How many pints? Well, class, I'm going to go from bushels down to what's smaller than the bushel? Peck. And then what's smaller than the peck? Quart. And then smaller than the quart is the pint. So I'm going from larger to smaller to smaller to smaller. I'm going to multiply a few times here. Multiply by 4. Then multiply by 8. Then multiply by 2. What do we get for our answer on number 25? Kirsten?
1,600.
1,600 pints. How many had that for number 23? Anyone need to see number 23 worked out? Corey, you do? All right, so we have the 25 bushels. How many pints? So we're going to go from bushels to pecks. That means I got to multiply by 4 because I'm going from larger to smaller. That gives me 100 pecks. Then pecks needs to go to quarts. Well, it takes 8 quarts to a peck. So we're going to multiply by 8. That gets me up to 800 quarts. Then I can go to pints, but there's 2 pints in a quart. So we're going to multiply by 2, and that's where I get the 1,600. Does that make sense? All right. Any other questions on the 15 to 23? Let's take a look at 24. Read that for us, if you would, Bryson. First word problem about the apple grower, bottom of page 220.
In that regard, is of how you were to pick maximum of 20 packs of apples out of his orchard. What is the limit of bushel?
All right, so it says, hey, you can come pick apples in my orchard, but I don't want anybody picking more than 20 pecks of apples. Is it pecks? What is that? Most people don't understand pecks. They understand bushel baskets. How many have seen a bushel basket at the store or something like that? Big old, usually made of wicker of some kind, or yeah, a big old basket about so big. And how many bushels here, Bryson?
4.
Ooh. How many pecks in a bushel?
8. Oh.
Uh-oh.
4.
4, right? So we're dividing by 4, and 20 divided by 4 equals 5. So 5 bushels. How many had 5 bushels for 24? Number 25, go and read that for us if you would, Ben.
An average depth of the Red Sea is approximately 535 yards. What is the depth in feet?
All right, obviously it wasn't that deep where the Israelites had to cross. At least it wasn't at the moment that they crossed, but it sure felt deep to the Egyptians a few minutes later. What is the depth in feet? All we had to do was convert yards to feet here. Multiply by 3. Ben, what'd you get for your answer on 25?
1,531.
When you multiply by 3? 535 times 3. Let's see, 3 times 5?
15.
Carry the 1. 3 times 3 plus 1?
9, 10.
And 3 times 5 plus 1.
16.
16, there we go. So 1,605 feet would have been our answer there. Questions on 25. Question, Elaine.
I have a question on 24.
Oh.
I have a bushel basket at home.
We have a bushel basket at home. Good. What do you keep in a bushel basket? Stuffed animals?
Yarn.
Yarn.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of yarn.
Yeah.
All right, look up further on the page if you would, page 220, number 66 to 71 at your seats. So still on page 220, but just above the homework, I want you to do number 66 to 71. A little bit of order of operations review and a little bit more practice with converting units. Take just a couple minutes to work on these at your seats. No, it's not quite that big, but it is a good size. All right, number 66, order of operations. What did you get for your answer, Griffin?
I got a 0.8 repeating somehow.
Really? Okay. In your denominator, what was the first thing you had to do?
3 plus 1.
Which is
4.
4. Then what'd you have to do?
Multiplied by the 2.
2 times 4 is?
Oh, I see what I did.
What's 2 times 4?
8.
So what should our answer have been?
1.
1 should have been our answer. Number 67, what did you get, Sam?
28.
28 is correct. And number 68, what did you get, Kirsten?
20.
20 is correct. Number 69, 24 pecks. How many quarts? Multiplying by 8, what did you get, Elaine?
192.
192, because we're going from larger to smaller. We multiply. Number 70, 6 cups. How many fluid ounces, Michael?
42. I mean 48.
48 is correct. You're going from slightly larger cups to smaller fluid ounces. So larger to smaller, multiply by 8 fluid ounces to the cup. And 19 quarts. How many pints? What did you get for number 71, Ben?
9.5
Careful. Which one's bigger, the quart or the pint?
quart.
Right, so we're going from larger to smaller again. So again, we should multiply, not divide by 2. Should get anyone? Number 71, what do we get?
38.
38 pints. There we go. 38 pints. So again, if they'd said 19 pints is how many quarts, that would be 9.5. So careful to go larger to smaller, multiply. Flip over to page 223 now. Page 223. And you see at the bottom of the page how it has a little review section. If you turn the page, you'll notice that the review section continues. I want you to do pages 223 to 224, numbers 58 to 60, and 67 to 69. So just 6 more of these conversions to practice. Page 223 to 224, do 58 to 60, then flip the page and do 67 to 69. Take just a couple minutes to work on these also. Just a little longer to be finished. Looks like most of us are about done. All right, for sake of time, pencils down. Even if you're not finished with all of these, check the ones you got done. Number 58, so flip back to page 223. 12 gallons, how many quarts, Bryson? 48, because we're going from larger gallons to smaller quarts, we multiply by 4. Number 59, 160 ounces, how many pounds, Corey? 10, because we're going from smaller ounces to larger pounds, we divide by 16. Number 63, miles, how many feet, Kirsten?
15,840.
How many feet in a mile, class?
5,280.
5,280. We're going to multiply huge miles by smaller feet to get our answer there. 15,840. Turn the page. Number 67, 24 cups. How many pints then?
I didn't get them.
All right, well, let's take a look at it real quick. Are we going from larger to smaller or smaller to larger?
Smaller to larger.
Smaller to larger, smaller to larger, divide. There we go. And so we're going to divide by how many cups in a pint?
2.
2. If we divide by 2, we simply get
12.
12 pints. Good. Number 68. 64 pints. How many gallons? We had to go to gallons by way of what, class? Quarts. Sorry. What's between pints and gallons? Quarts are there. So we had to first divide by 2 to get the quarts, then divide by 4 to get the gallons. What do we get for our answer on 68, Michael? 8 gallons is correct. Number 69 was only one step, because we know how many inches are in a foot, class? 12. We're going from small inches to larger feet, class. We divide by 12 to get how many feet for number 69, Elaine? 20 feet is correct. Questions on those? Let's drill through these very quickly one more time. This time we're just going to say them together as a class one more time. 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. Let's do that one again. 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. 1 peck equals 8 quarts. 1 pint equals 2 cups. 1 tablespoon equals 3 teaspoons. Say that one more time. 1 tablespoon equals 3 teaspoons. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. 1 pint equals 15. Oh, that was rough. 16 fluid ounces. Remember, a pint is a pound. Pound 16 ounces, a pint is 16 ounces. Class, let's say it again. 1 pint equals 16 fluid ounces. One more time, because we had a hiccup there. 1 pint equals 16 fluid ounces. And because a pint is 16, class, 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. Remember, a cup is half as big, so it's going to have half as many fluid ounces in that cup. 1 yard equals 36 inches. 1 quart equals 2 pints. 1 foot equals 12 inches. 1 fluid ounce equals 2 tablespoons. 1 bushel equals 4 pecks. 1 pound equals 16 ounces, just like a pint is 16 fluid ounces. 1 yard equals 3 feet. 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. Clear desks, except for a clean sheet of paper and a pencil. Desk cleared except for a clean sheet of paper and a pencil. Everything else away. Clean sheet of paper and a pencil. This is quiz 21, so if you're watching on YouTube and your mom has already pulled quiz 9, this is not quiz 9, remember. We skipped chapters 3, 4, and 5. We are on chapter 6. We'll get back to the others, so we're going to get back to those quizzes we're skipping, but make sure that if your parents are proctoring this, you are taking quiz 21. If it doesn't have units on it, it's the wrong quiz, all right, because we're working on units right now. All right, when you get your quiz, first and last name in the name spot, today's date in the date spot. Today is 10/18/23 as we record. 10/18/23, they're sticking together. There we go. Is today's date. First and last name, 10/18/23. And you'll use that blank sheet of paper as a cover sheet. Numbers 1 through 8. You just write the number. That's it. That's all you need to do. Put the number. Numbers 9 through 14, you're actually going to convert. So that's where you've got to think. Am I going smaller to larger or larger to smaller? You also need to be careful on, let's see. Nope, doesn't look like they've got any on here that are multi-step. So these are all single-step conversions, which is going to help you out a little bit. So this should be pretty straightforward. Hey, show your work. Show whether you multiply or divided. Show what you multiply or divided by. That way, if your brain has a little bit of a glitch and you mess it up, I can still give you partial credit. You may begin. Yeah, that's it. Just write the number. So you're using that cover sheet. That's what the blank paper's for. sure you're facing the front. Do not be turning around looking around the room. Just have a seat right back here. When you finish, turn your paper over just quietly. Just a couple more minutes to be finishing up. We're going to go and take a look at this quiz tomorrow. For now, if you would go open up your textbooks to page 221. Page 221. Tomorrow we're going to get into this a lot more. I just want to kind of preview what we're getting into in our next lesson, and we've been dealing with our US customary measures. Length, we use inches, feet, yards, miles, right? In how much something can hold, we use things like cups, pints, quarts, gallons. For dry measures, there's pints and quarts, and there's pecks and there's bushels. We said for how much something weighs, we use measurements like ounces, pounds, and in some extreme cases, tons. The metric system doesn't use that. The metric system is called the metric system because the most common measure is that measure of length that is the meter. The metric system. It is called the metric system. It's based on 3 primary units. Mark these. They're in bold there on page 221. The meter, which is length. The liter, which is capacity. Capacity just means how much something can hold. So instead of measuring in like cups and pints, they would use liters. And grams, which is how much mass something has. It's somewhat analogous to weight. We'll save that for a science class there. So the meter, the liter, and the gram are the 3 main units. Well, rather than, for instance, we have the inch. If you have 12 of them, we have a new unit called the foot. If you have 3 of those, you have a new unit called the yard, and so forth. But they're all rather randomized, as we talked about before. The metric system is nice because everything they do stays based on, for instance, with length, the meter. Meter. Well, what if you have 10 of them? Then you have 10 meters. They have a name for it. It's called the decameter. Well, what if you had 100 of them? Well, now we have something called the hectometer. But you notice meter's still in the name. What if you had 1,000 of them? That's a kilometer or kilometer. What if you chopped it into 10 pieces? Then we have a tenth. We call it a decimeter. Chop that into 10 pieces. Centimeter. That's something we're familiar with from our ruler. Chop that into 10 pieces. We get the little tiny thing on the ruler called the millimeter. But the word meter is always there. The same thing would be true for liters if we were talking about how much something could hold. If we were talking about how much something weighed, we would have grams. A gram is very, very light, very, very little. But if you had 10 of them, decagram, 100 of them, hectogram, 1,000 of them, kilogram, right? And so all these units, they all use the same prefixes. And you see a table there of metric prefixes. Notice kilo is going to be abbreviated with the letter K, but right above kilo, class, it tells you the value of kilo. Class, kilo means 1,000. Hecto means 100. Deco means 10. What if there isn't a prefix? What if it's just meter or gram or liter? Well, that's the actual unit, right? And the actual unit just means one of that thing, right? Just means you have it, right? But deci means 0.1. What does 0.1 mean, class? 0.1. 1/10. So deci, class, means what? 1/10. I want you to put 1/10 there next to deci or below it or above it. They have 0.1. I'd rather not use the decimal here for your understanding of what the prefix means. I'd rather you associate it with 1/10. Though we do understand, of course, that is 0.1. What about centi? Well, centi means 0.01, class, but what would that be as a fraction?
100.
1/100th. 1/100th. And then milli means 1/1000th. Right? 0.001 would be the decimal value. Notice all of these are based on powers of 10. 10, 100, 1,000, 10th, 100th, 1,000th. And you remember a while back when we talked about multiplication and division, I said how we could multiply and divide by powers of 10 by just boink, 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 moving the decimal wherever it needed to go? And the same thing's going to be true with the metric system. How many remember doing that when you were in 6th grade? You remember just moving the decimal. That's it. No math. No multiplying. No dividing. No remembering how many, there's 3 of this, but there's 12 of that, there's 2 of that, there's 4 of the other. No remembering any of that. This is why most of the world has gone to the metric system. The math is so much easier. You just move the decimal. But it's important to remember, of course, what the prefixes mean. Let's drill them again, class. Kilo means 1,000. Hecto means 100. Deca means
10.
If there's no prefix, it's just 1. Deci means?
1/10.
1/10. Centi means?
1/100.
1/100th, and milli means?
1/1000.
What are some ways we could remember centi to mean 1/100th? What's a good, easy way to remember centi? What do you think, Michael?
Centipede.
You could, though technically most centipedes don't actually have 100 legs. Ben?
Century.
You could remember a century as 100 years. I was actually thinking of something even easier. I was thinking money.
100 cents in a dollar.
A cent is a 100th of a dollar. That's why we call it a cent, because it's a 100th of a dollar. What about deca, meaning 10?
Decade.
If you happen to know that a decade is 10 years, right? We know that this is the 2020s decade, right? That's the decade where the 2010s was the decade before that. You sometimes we do decade day for different spirit weeks in the past. You dress up like people did in the 70s or in the 40s. Everyone would look really sharp. But anyway, I digress. What about milli? Meaning 1,000th.
Millennium?
You might think of a millennium. Most of us know that a millennium is 1,000 years. So that now it's 1,000th. It's not 1,000, but that might help us remember. So there's different ways you might be able to remember these different prefixes and what they mean. But the key is, starting tomorrow, as we work with metric units, everything's going to be about movement of the decimal, because we're going to be multiplying or dividing, quote unquote, by powers of 10. So we're going to work on all of that tomorrow. I do want you to look really quickly before we wrap up at the metric customary equivalents. You don't have to know these, you don't have to memorize these, but it'll help you get an idea. A centimeter is about 0.39 inches. That's about a little bit more than 1/3 of an inch, right? A meter is just a little more than a yard, 1.09 yards, just a little bigger. Notice a kilometer is about 0.62 miles. Remember, 0.625 means 5/8, right? So it's about 5/8 of a mile. A millimeter, that tiny little, or milliliter rather, really tiny compared to the ounce. A liter, just a little bit bigger than a quart, but a kiloliter is enormously larger than the gallon. Notice how many grams it takes to make an ounce, class.
0.0.
Look at this. How many grams to make 1 ounce? 28.35 grams. Is that first thing under mass? Do you see it? So you get an idea. An ounce is already really little, right? But it takes about 28 grams just to make a single ounce. A gram is very, very small. Kilogram, this is an important number just to kind of keep in the back of your mind. A kilogram is how many pounds?
2.2.
A little bigger than 2, right? So if you weigh, say, 80 pounds, you'd be about half that many kilograms. Maybe not quite 40, be a little smaller than that, but around that, right? So when you hear kilograms, double that-ish to get your pounds. A little bit more than double that for your pounds. No homework this evening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and you are dismissed.
Oh, yeah, this is.
Do we get it?